All right, we're
Back
go.
at it on a Monday.
We got a busy week this week. We got fixed
Busy week.
busy week. So a lot of great guests. Today we're going to talk football with Coach Luciani, head coach of Butler High School, your alma mater.
Yes,
So
sir.
we could fire up the Butler stories, get that rolling. Coach has also been obviously head coach a couple other places as well. I think
A lot of sports.
What's that? And a lot of different sports. And you
A
know
lot of
that.
different sports.
Yep, and we'll let him talk a little bit about that in a second.
Group 1 ball.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we know that well, all of us. So crazy weekend as well, obviously. So
Some historic shit going on, bro.
yeah, with the president being shot at and
He made a nice cut, nice little head jab.
that's unbelievable. That's like a Jedi warrior move right there.
Straight Matrix status.
Straight Matrix, unbelievable. But we could talk about that a little later. But without further ado, let's bring on Coach Luciani. How you doing, Coach?
Gentlemen, thank you for having me on. Good to see both of you.
Coach, appreciate you taking the time, bud. We know
Good to have you on, Coach. We're excited. Luciani family runs deep as a football family, so definitely know it well. We're excited to have you on. You're head coach of Butler High School. But talk about your kind of your whole career and give us background from that. Everyone a background from that standpoint, and then we'll roll from there.
Okay, so in high school, growing up, I grew up in Pompton Lakes, which is one town over from Butler. Grew up Little League baseball, youth football, wrestled a little bit, played a little bit of basketball. And when I got into high school, I concentrated on football and I did track. My dad was the head coach at Pompton Lakes when I was there. Coach, I remember you in high school, and I got a little surprise for you.
Good. Oh,
great. I don't know if I could share my screen or not, but I'll tell the story. And then
you might be able to share your screen. Well, I could.
Anyway, sure. I'll tell the story first, then you could tell me, Coach, if it's doable.
Okay.
So, what year were you? What year did you graduate Saddlebrook?
92.
Yeah. Okay. So we played against each other. You wouldn't remember me. I was just a tackle, but I remember you. We were playing Saddlebrook, and we were having a real good season. And our coaches all week, we got to stop Schuman. He's the one guy who could destroy our perfect season. And we had all these adjustments in the game plan. And like the first play of the second half, you took it for like 60 yards on a sweep. And it's like burned in my memory having to go to the sideline. We told you we ended up winning the game, but you certainly hold a place in my memory for that play and the week building up into that play. So I remember you in track as well, Coach. You ran track too, right?
Yeah, the hurdler. Yep. Yeah, hurdler jumper.
You guys had a real good track team, and we did too. And it was going to come down to one of the distance races. And we had a distance runner named JP Donnelly. And you had a bunch of good distance runners, and you guys boxed them. You put a guy in front of him and a guy to the side of him, and he couldn't break out. You boxed him for the whole mile. I can't even remember if you guys won or lost, but those are my Schuman memories. I just wanted to share it.
There you go, Coach. There you go, buddy.
And I do have you queued up, Coach, on that touchdown. I got it saved up. If you could figure out how to share with me later, I'll let all your fans.
Oh yeah, I would love to see it.
I'll text
if you let me see. Hold on. Let me see if I can.
Oh, he's gonna try and figure this one out.
I could share.
He wants to see it, bro. I know he did a little high step too into the end zone. D-Rock.
Oh.
There's two things I know, Coach. This is two things that are facts from at least from when I was in Saddlebrook. One, we would always lose the Pompton Lakes in football, and two, we would always beat them in track. So those are the two facts. Those are two facts in football. No matter if I gain yards or not. That game, which I think was my senior year, it rained. I believe it was at Saddlebrook, and it rained.
Oh well, thank God, because it wasn't going to be at Hirsch. It would have been underwater.
Well, in the first half, you got I couldn't. I was running, and I had a couple of opportunities to break through, and you guys just got me. And but my socks were soaked. I took them off. I played with no socks in the second half. That's why I think that's when I broke the run, but it wasn't enough. You guys are better than us. But I think you guys beat me 3 times when I was in high school. My sophomore year when DeSarno was the quarterback,
Yeah.
At Saddle.
Tommy DeSarno. Yeah, he was a good player. He was a real good player. We
Real
had good
good
teams back then. Yeah, we made the state finals when I was a sophomore. And then when I was a junior, I think we were 8-1 and didn't get in. They were only taking 4 teams at the time.
Yep.
And then
I remember that. I remember
And
when
then-
they used to do that, when you actually had to work to make the playoffs.
You had
for a
to
while.
work. You really
Yeah.
had to work.
And then my senior year, we were 9-0, and we lost to Wallington 14-8 in the semifinals.
What was your graduation year? Was
92.
Oh, you were 92 also. Okay, so
Yep.
that team. I remember that team being really. The team the year before, I think you guys beat us 12-6, and that was my junior year, and I had sat out all of preseason. Had some sort of, I don't know what, something was bothering my back, and I remember this is when I had still Steve Gertie as my head coach. And that was after that game, because I remember this so clearly. After we lost that game 12-6, and I didn't run for a lot of yards my junior year. I think I don't remember gaining a bunch of yards. And Coach Gertie went around. I don't know if you know who Steve Gertie is, but he was a long. By the time he coached me at Saddlebrook, like my first few years there, he was he was in his 70s. But he was like kind of like a legendary old school coach, like had been around, like Passaic Valley, I think was there forever. I think he was at a few places, won a bunch of games. By the time he got to us, he's a gigantic man. Anyway, he walks around as tall as I was as big as I was 6'1", like 220. He was 6'3", probably about 280. And at 73, he was 6'3", 280.
Damn.
So, yeah, he was a huge man. So anyway, he goes around the room after we were watching film. He goes around the room and just rips everybody. I mean, you could never do this stuff anymore. I mean, when I mean rips everybody, like you could not. He just ripped literally every single varsity player. And he got to me, and I was like, I thought he was gonna be like, oh, a little disappointed. He went on a tirade about me. And he started going, he said, everybody keeps saying, wait till you get Schuman, wait till you get Schuman. He's like, I had Schuman starting for 3 years and he ain't done shit for me. That was after my junior year game. That was our first game against you guys, because I think and then we had a bunch of injuries, but I think they believed that we were going to be really, really good. I think we ended up being 4-4, but they thought we were going to be great. The next, because Pump the Lakes was great that year. It was toe to toe. We lost 12-6. They went 8-1, and then we had a bunch of injuries, so we ended up being okay. But yeah, that's funny. I don't know how to cue this up. You may have to, maybe I don't know if you email it to me. I could probably pop it over. But
right. I will definitely shoot you an email on our first break. But yeah, so anyway, my playing career, I was a mediocre high school football player. I was a coach's kid. I knew what to do. I hustled. I played, tackle, linebacker. I went to Glassboro. I got accepted to Glassboro State College.
That's Rowan for all of you young
Rowan
guys.
now, yes.
Yeah, Rowan now. When I was the summer going into my freshman year, Henry Rowan made the $100 million donation to Glassboro.
Not a bad donation though, bud.
Yep. And they made the transition to Rowan. And I did not play in college. I was about I'm 5'10". I was 180 pounds at the time. No way I was going to play tackle for Rowan, but I knew I was going to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to be a coach. And when I graduated from Rowan, my first teaching job was at Kinlawn High School. And I got hired in January of 97, I believe, or 98, January 98, to replace Bob Sawyer, who was the head coach at Kinlawn for quite a long time.
Yep.
Not as the head football coach, but just as a phys ed teacher.
Right.
And then I was there for that spring, and then they riffed me because I wasn't a lacrosse guy, and they wanted to hire a lacrosse guy. And at the time, John Byduk was the athletic director at Kinlawn, and his brother-in-law was Jimmy Smith, who was the superintendent at Butler. And he called me and he said, hey, my brother-in-law has an opening down in Butler. Why don't you go talk to him?
We've had Coach Byduk on.
Yeah. So I went to see Coach Smith. He said, all right, go talk to the athletic director. And the AD at the time was Pete Sandor. And Pete Sandor was moving on to Summit, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And he was leaving. And Tom Hamilton is the phys ed teacher who I ended up replacing. was going to be the athletic director. So Pete Sandor had me in his office and he said, "What will you coach here at Butler?" I said, "Sir, I'll coach just about anything. If you bring me on, I'll coach whatever you tell me to." He said, "Will you coach gymnastics?" I said, "Oh, yes, sir. I'll coach gymnastics." And he said, "How about girls basketball?" I said, "Yeah, I'll coach." "How about girls track?" "Yeah." He said, "Okay, go back up and see Jimmy Smith." He said, "All right." Sandor said, "You're good. You're coaching gymnastics, girls basketball, and girls track." And that was what I did at Butler. I didn't coach football at Butler my first year. I coached gymnastics because that was what it took at the time to secure a position. And then the following year, I stopped doing gymnastics. Bob Jones was the head football coach at the time, and he said, "There's not a paid job, but if you want to come on and volunteer, come on and volunteer." So for that year, I ended up working mostly on the defensive side of the ball with Mike Myers, who was the DC, and Mike was on his way out, moving into administration. And the next year, I ended up kind of doing the defense with Dan Hofflinger. I don't know, that was like 99, 2000.
Yeah.
And, ever since then, when Bob left in maybe 2001, Dan Hofflinger took the job, 2002. And then Dan retired in 06. Jim Matsakis came on the staff somewhere along at that point. Jimmy came on in 04. And then when Dan left in 07, Jimmy took the head job. And then Jimmy left to go to West Orange in 2012, which was his last season. Yeah. And so 2013 was my first season as head coach. And I've been the custodian of the program ever since then. So it's Butler's been a great place to work. It's been great for me. I'm lucky. I'm a lucky guy, man. Believe me. I'm lucky to have found a community in a school like Butler High School. Believe me, a lot of guys don't get to have the experience I had. So I'm over the moon with the administration, the type of place it is, the type of kids it has, the type of football players it has, the grit in the kids, and it's been a great positive experience for me.
It's amazing because we've had a lot of obviously Butler people on, as we started doing it, you grab the friends and family approach here, and as we've been building it up, that was part of it. And Derek had a lot of people on that were either with Butler or had been with Butler or had a connection to Butler, basically, right? I would say for the most part, right, Derek?
Yeah, we've had Coach Mick on, or
Montclair State,
Smith
or
Montclair
on,
State, By Duke, like some of these guys, all these guys that kind of have linked back or have helped me through the network. But I mean, and Dave coming from a Group 1 program as well. But I think it was really eye-opening after we had Coach Mickens on, right? Dave was like, "Yo, these are getting there are so many people looking at this," and I just like, well, Butler's a cult. It's like, it really is just like, it's really kind of like a cult. Like they just love football, and it's just you really don't understand it until you're in it, or some way, shape, or form. It's just a very different type of place where like football just brings everybody together, and it's just what people do.
We live in a real cool area of New Jersey too, where it's like you have all these small towns around. It's like Butler, Bloomingdale, Pompton, Riverdale, Pequannock, Kinnelon, Wanacue, Ringwood. It's like this small area of North Jersey, and a lot of families, they stay in these towns and these areas. They like I grew up in Pompton. Now I have a house in Butler, and a lot of the guys that I went to high school with are the same. They live in Ringwood, or they live in Pompton Plains. Yep. A lot of Butler guys, they now move on to Pequannock, or they, I live in Pompton now. I live here now. So yep. It's a good place to live. It's a good place to raise your family. There's small communities. The kids can walk. The schools are good, and people don't want to leave. It's a short commute to New York City. Yep. All the amenities that you need are right within this area. So
Dave actually brought this up and talked about it too. Like if you're not going to Butler, you're not just like passing through it. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to be, 23 North, like that's what it is. If you're going to Butler, like that's the only reason you would ever be around some of those communities. Like it's a different place geographically as well. That kind of sets it apart. Saddlebrook, you could be in and out through it, and now all of a sudden, now you're in a different piece of it, right? So,
right.
But
Yep.
I think that the other good thing transitioning now would be like, like all of those now small schools that you play now, coach, right? Like those small Bergen County Group 1 type programs that now are comparable to what you guys do, get a little bit to come out by you get to go to them. Like that's a little bit of something different. That's it's actually way different than when we were playing.
Derek, when I first started at Butler's schedule was obscene. It was really obscene. Even when you played, Butler was playing DePaul, Delbarton, Passaic Valley, Wayne Valley. I mean, just all these gigantic. We were playing Clifford Scott, Bishop Francis. I mean, just the level of competition that these kids had to play, and the kids never looked away from it. But there were many times where I'm looking at this like, dude, we got a good team. If we could just play some teams that are like us, we're going to have a shot. I look back to, I wasn't coaching at the time, but Butler's 95 team, they were only taking 4 teams at the time. They went 4-4 and got in the playoffs and won a state sectional championship, So, I think one of their losses were like they lost to Wayne Valley and Delbarton. If something like that happened today, people be beside themselves. But, I think that moving into this new conference has been really good for the school, especially for football. To just come into a season where, you have a shot every week.
Correct.
I mean, it really does. It does wonders for the kids and the atmosphere of the school. I think back to we made the state finals in 2009. We lost to Mountain Lakes. And that was 2009 was the first year we played in the NJIC. We were playing teams we should play: Mountain Lakes, Pequannock, Kinnelon, Whippany Park. In the year before, we had Delbarton, Lakeland, DePaul, PV, Orange. And those kids with the same team now, mind you, were 0-10. They went from 0-10, a little bit of a schedule change to, I think they were, we had 2 losses that year. We were 10-2, something like that. So
flip the whole switch.
The schedule you play, it matters, especially, we got 400 kids walking the building in Butler.
That's the difference.
There's 400 kids walking around. Now a lot of them, they play football from the time they're in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. So we have that culture. But at the end of the day, we're not going to have the depth that a lot of these bigger schools are going to have. So.
No, the culture of Butler is unique. That area as well. I'm glad you brought it up. With the small schools, I mean, it's really like there's a cluster over there of small schools that in Bergen County there's a ton of them as well, but they're in different pockets, usually surrounded by a bigger town. You guys have a cluster of small towns and small schools all around each other. I do think that's, and we talked about it maybe last week or a couple of weeks ago. I think it's unique that in North Jersey, like I can only think of a few places around the country where small school football is even a thing. I think you got a little bit of it in maybe Connecticut. I don't think you have it much in New York because those are mostly big regional schools. I don't think you have much of it in Pennsylvania. I don't think you have much of it in Delaware. Like New Jersey's really unique. North Jersey in particular is really unique with a whole north small school element between Bergen, Passaic, even a little bit of Essex County. Obviously, you guys are at the tip of Morris.
Yeah, but like Cedar Grove, those kind of schools.
Yep. It's very unique thing, and then there's like a pride to it. And one of the parts that I think you're in the NJIC, right? That
is correct. Yep, NJIC.
Right. So I think Butler came in after I left from Powell Park. So you probably came in a couple of years after.
2018.
Yeah, a few years after.
Year in the NJIC. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But that conference is a great conference for small schools, and it's given them an opportunity. Because in the old days, like when you were played at Pompton Lakes and I was at Saddlebrook, you did have like Passaic Tech and some bigger like
Catholic,
Parish Catholic and some
Catholic,
maybe some Group 3s on the schedule like Garfield back in the day, like. But as it's evolved, as football evolved, that was no longer, even if you beat those teams, it was no longer going to be good for the programs because of the fact that, one team had, I remember we when I was coaching at Saddlebrook, we had 26 kids total on the team. We beat Passaic Tech, but we had 26. They had 100 on the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, so you beat them. You won the battle, but did you necessarily win the war, right? Because of the fact that you might be beat up and all those.
Did you even come out of it healthy?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially Patterson Catholic in the end. The BPS, like they were so good. Like we would win every once in a while, but but it was like that whole next week. You hoped you had a really like an easy target on the next week because you had to recover from that week. So, but yeah, it's very unique. It's like it's one of those things that you guys are in a really strong position. Some of those programs that in the end they have to kind of move those schedules around because there's probably like, Hasbrook Heights is good. You guys are real good. Pompton Lakes is usually pretty strong. Hawthorne's pretty strong.
Glen Rock is always a strong team.
Glen
Rock
Rock
has been very successful, in the past few years.
But Saddlebrook is on the borderline. Like they're teetering now. They've been teetering like it's year to year, like whether they'll have decent numbers, and there's some other programs that I want to say Cresskill is now merged. Is that correct? I think I'm correct.
Cresskill is co-opt with.
See, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, I mean back up until several years ago, Cresskill they're one of the dominant Group 1 teams in the entire state.
Yes,
fucking cream of the crop, Cresskill.
Yeah,
not to say that the coaching or the kids still aren't there, but this is part. This is one of the things I always say. It's very cyclical in Group 1. We were in the state finals last year. We were taking beatings 2 years ago with these kids.
Right.
This is the way it works. So, but for a Group 1 school, you don't mind, at least from my perspective, right? When you are maybe don't have the talent level of another Group 1 school, and you have to take your losses, and you take them as learning experiences, right? But it's something different when you're playing schools who have 1,000 kids walking the hallway with 100 kids on the sideline who are playing 2-3 platoon style of football. At Butler, for us, we have, we play 15, 16, 17 kids. That's how many play for us. Now we're talking offense, defense, and special teams.
Yep.
So, we were down at the Jets 7-on-7 a couple of weeks ago, and we had a great tournament. We advanced to the second day, and we played some really big schools. We played Montclair. We played Newark East Side. We played Cardinal Hayes on Long Island in the finals.
Studs.
We played West Orange. So, we're on offense. Maybe we score. Those 7 kids got to come back and play defense. And all 4 of these teams are running their defense and running their offense on. By the end of, now I'm not saying, we did really well against West Orange in the finals, but we were gassed.
Run out of gas, man.
We were gassed by the end. Our kids are playing both ways. They're having offense and defense, and that happened to no excuses, no moral victories, but just to illustrate the point that, these are the type of things that you have to be mindful of when you're a Group 1 program. It's just that's the nature of the beast.
Yep.
No doubt about it. Those 15, 16 guys that you have are the key, and you might have a couple guys that you plug in here and there for a few plays, or maybe a couple specials. But yeah, that's 100% the case. Talk about what Butler tradition is like. Obviously as the head coach there, you're the person that's carrying the torch for Butler. What is that Butler tradition like?
Well, first of all, the school is a place where the kids they know each other from the time they're in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And the teachers know who the kids are. So when you're walking the building, there's only, like I've said to you several times, there's only 400 kids. I know the face of every single kid. I know their first name. I don't always get to do it, but we make a habit in the building of trying to call the kids by name, say hello to them, hold doors for each other. Just if we've had teachers come from um, other districts coming, and they always say, I can't believe how nice these kids are. They hold the door for me. They say hello to me. These are just the things like that. When I try to tell people what it is actually like to work in a place like Butler, where the kids, I know in a lot of towns, a lot of schools, maybe where there's a little bit more money, um, teachers can be kind of looked down on. Police can be kind of looked down on. Military, maybe not a career. When you live in this town or are from Bloomingdale, people who work in law enforcement, educators, the military, they're looked upon with a modicum of respect, where it's still, nobody is ever, not to say kids are not disrespectful, but you're viewed through a lens of a mentor and an educator, and kids are not disrespectful to that title. They don't want to let their parents down. They don't want to let their teachers down. And the word I guess I would use to describe Butler, Bloomingdale kids would be grit. They have they're gritty kids. They're not easily deterred. They know how to work through issues. Maybe they don't have everything that they want, but they know if they can work hard enough that they can get it somewhere in the point in their life. Everything is not handed to them. A lot of kids in school, if they want to have a car, their mom and dad don't buy it for them. They have to work. They got to pay their insurance. They got to pay their gas. And, I think that just lends itself to kids who are, generally well-adjusted, and activities like football and basketball and wrestling and whatever else, they're viewed as, this is something that I really want to do, not something my mom and dad are making me do. It's an escape. I don't have to worry about work. I don't have to be at work. I can just be on the field, and I can be with my friends. And, it's just, for whatever reason, it's ingrained in the culture. And it was like that the day I walked in the door, and hopefully it'll be, 26 years ago. It was like that probably the 75 years before I got there. And hopefully it'll be like that for the next 100 years after that. So it really is it's a good place to work. The parents care, the teachers care, the kids care. And, we're just, we're lucky. We're lucky.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, is that it's truly a community. And I, we talked about how where it's located, you have a lot of people like next generation that might stay there, that are a part of it, or relatives that are a part of it. I think that's a big deal in holding down the culture. And it's interesting because, going from growing up in Saddlebrook, which was a small town where I basically knew like everybody. Like I could tell you like all the people that were athletes on my block, like, from the time, and I, Derek, and you might have the same feeling from when you were in Pompton Lakes, right? Like this person over there played soccer, and this person over there was a football player, and he was a starting quarterback on the high school team, and he was the running back, and like, like I knew who everybody was from the time I was a young kid, like from when I was playing out in the yard, when people would ride by, right? Like I was that kid that, you'd be like, oh my God, does he ever, stop throwing a football to himself? Like I would just go out there, but that's how it was, like, and then the older, I remember we had a quarterback who lived across the street and 3 doors down, Vinny Liberty. He was a quarterback at Saddlebrook, like in the early 80s, I would say, maybe it was mid 80s. And he would come over, man, and that was like, he was like in high school, and I was like a fourth, or I don't know what, younger kid. And he's like, you got to catch these passes. And he would just fire the ball at me, and I would just catch them, and I would be like, my hands would feel like they were going to fall off, and, but that was like what shapes you, those kind of things shape you, as a program. And that's what Butler has. Like, they know who that person is across the street, down the block. And it's a key thing, for developing the culture in the town. And Butler's been able to maintain that. That's amazing
what I think
thing.
is the biggest difference. Is it's, look, you, like Coach said, you have your highs and your lows of, hey, these guys, some years we're up, some years we're down, but when we're down, we're never really down. You know what I mean? Even numbers wise, it is what it is. And it always kind of just bounces back. And, when you play as a young guy there, you know that eventually like things are going to happen. And then it's just like your team now. Like these guys were all starting as freshmen and sophomores. And now, okay, here we go, boys. Like now it's time. These are your year to kind of do your thing. And I think, like I said, that was a nice showing at that 7-on-7. That was real big. But you saw it like, all right, you're going against a quarterback going to Bucknell. You're going against a receiver who's going to Syracuse. And those guys get to go to the sideline and grab a swig of water and towel off. And now all of a sudden, that's what it is. You just burn out. It's no pun or no shame on those players themselves, but eventually, like, you're gonna burn out. That's why, like at Butler, I always took pride in the fact that, like, I know we know we're never leaving the field. We got to train. We got to work that much harder, and we got to be more conditioned. We got to be in better shape so that in the fourth quarter, when those guys are, still fresh, we got to be as fresh as we possibly can be because we're not leaving the field. And you got to go into it with that mentality. And that's where, Coach, you talked about the grit. And it's like, that's just what we are, who we are. It's always how it's been.
Yeah, Derek, it's ingrained in them. They have a superb youth program.
We've talked about that too. Like
right now, and
I think that for you, that was one of the biggest things too, because like when I was growing up, it was Butler was one, Bloomingdale was another, right? So that was like the biggest rivalry ever as a kid growing up. Then I don't know, a couple years, I don't know how many years ago it's been now, when you took those two towns and now merged them into one youth program. Like now we're talking, you're really cooking with gas because now you're really could possibly be playing with the same dudes from first grade, rather than just freshman year when we got into high school. Like I thought that was just such a monumental move for you, like for you guys as now, coming in, okay, these guys have already been playing together.
Yeah, when I first started working at Butler, and obviously when you were there, Derek, it was the Bloomingdale Chiefs and the Butler Bulldogs, and they were competitors.
Whew.
And my kids, we moved to Butler in 2005.
Right.
And, when my son first started playing football, it was the organizations were still separate. And then I started helping out coaching. I got on the board for the Butler Junior Bulldogs, and there had always been talks of the two organizations merging. And then my son's fourth grade year, I'm no good with math, but it really the talks really became serious. And there was a lot of back and forth about what are we going to do, and eventually we were able to merge the two organizations into what
that's amazing. It's amazing. That's amazing to get that done
as the BBYC. And of all the things I've done in my career as Butler, that probably is the thing I'm most proud of, is being a small part of getting those two organizations to come together, because that organization now really does some amazing things for football.
It hums. It literally, whenever and obviously I've been a lot of places now, right, with a lot of different, like, all over. It's like when you get that feeder cooking. I mean, we just had Coach Mass from West Milford on, right? So we just had him. And we just had him on. He's a freaking firecracker as always.
I just saw Maz couple last week.
You guys threw on Monday, I think, right?
Yeah, threw on Monday.
Yeah. He was trying to brag, but I told him to relax. It's still West Milford at the end of the day. But so he was talking, like, one of the things he did too, same thing, right? Like he had a youth, like when he got into the youth program there and started really getting it going. And Dave sees it now because Dave's got a 9-year-old that he's now coaching. So Dave's really in it in his youth organization, and he's starting to see, like, and he does things different than some of the other levels, and some of these guys are kind of looking at him with a little bit of a tilted head. And now, like, Dave's seen success with those younger kids just tweaking a little thing here or there, and now it's like, oh, maybe we should do it this way. So he's in it now, but Middletown's a bit of a different place, so he's got it.
That's a big town, right, Coach? That's
huge town, 70,000 people. Yeah. I mean, we have
two Group 4 high schools, like.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And there's two youth programs.
Yep.
That are both pretty good in the same town. So, but yeah, no, I'm curious. Your father was the head coach of Pompton Lakes, right? When you
Yes.
were there,
Yes, you
and he was wildly successful. Greatest, by the way, screen game of all time.
Screen draw.
The greatest screen draw game of all time. Literally, he could teach a clinic on those two things. I'd be engaged for 5 hours because he ran it to perfection. Like you knew it was coming, and just like,
Oh yeah.
Talk about what it was like having a father as a football coach, and a lot of things that you learned, from your dad that you take with you now.
Oh man. Okay. So my dad, when I was growing up, he was the freshman coach for Pompton Lakes High School. And I could still remember, like, he would have these are the things I remember, right? He had these long tube socks that had red and white stripes on them, and he had the red and white bike shorts, and he
The
would wear
bike shorts.
Yes, those
he
bike
would
shorts.
wear like a white t-shirt. And I remember all I ever wanted to do when I was a little kid was be able to dress like that. To wear red and white, cool socks, cool coaching shorts. And then he would, when back in the day, there was no huddle or anything. So his job as the freshman coach would be to go out and he would scout on Saturdays while the varsity was playing. Well, he used to take me to the games. He'd let me hold the clipboard. He'd let me write little notes. And, ever since then, that was all I ever wanted to do. I was the kid who was always so proud, like everything. I had friends in college who would call me Pompton. That was my nickname because I would just wear my Pompton gear all around Glassboro. You know what I mean? I just wanted to be affiliated with that school, and when I started at Butler, I had all kinds of that's just who I am. I to be part of an organization, to me, was the coolest thing ever, right? And so for me, now, and I want Butler kids to feel the same way about Butler, the way I felt about, my high school when I was a little kid, just to be prideful of where you're from and what everything's about, and that's one of the big things that, going back to my dad, that was ingrained in me from a very, very early age, to do things the right way, to, write things down. My dad's big thing was write it down or you screw up, so, write practice plans, write scripts, take notes when something's wrong, write it down so you can go back and fix it later. Attention to detail. Oh man, every step had to be done the proper way. Back to the screen game, like the left tackle, you have to count until 1001, then you release to the left, and your first step on the release has got to be so and so. And it was like that for every position, and it. On top of that was how to instruct kids how to do things the proper way. So, and my dad was really good. He's really good at building relationships. My dad was for his educational career, he was a shop teacher. He taught wood shop and he taught metal shop and he taught auto shop. And he would, part of his job in the afternoons, he would do, the work study program. But back then it was called industrial arts, right? The kids who were going to go into auto trade or, they work in a factory or whatever. And he would go out and get those kids jobs and he would check on them throughout the course of the afternoon, whatever. And when I see the people who I see the most are those kids that he worked with. And they're always want to say, hey, tell your dad I said hello. He was really good at that very specific thing, building relationships and being non-judgmental. I mean, he would judge you on your football performance, but when it was all over, at the end of the day, you're back to just being you. And that's one of the things, playing for my dad was not easy, but when we were home, football was over, it was over. And then, when I moved to Butler, my son came and played for me, and I was hard on him, certainly on the football field, but, once football is over, it's over, so we can come home, we can do all those types of things. But so to do things the right way, to be proud of where you're from, to hold people to a standard for that organization, to understand that ultimately the organization is more important than you, right? I am a custodian of Butler. Butler was good before me. Butler is going to be good after me. My job is to make sure things stay at the level they're supposed to be at, hold people in our football team, the coaches, the players, to a standard, and make sure that that standard is met. And that's all we're trying to do. And, I've had a great experience, like I said, playing for my dad, and you'd have to ask my son if he had had as good an experience playing for me, but I'd like to think that he did. And my daughter went through the school as well. They both had real positive experiences. I didn't get to coach my daughter, but so yeah, so that's what it was like growing up in the Luciani household.
Really interesting. Obviously, my father was a track coach up until 2 months ago. He's basically and having run for him in high school. He didn't coach football; he coached track. And it's interesting. It's interesting. I always get interesting to hear someone else's perspective.
Right.
Playing for their father and what that was like. Right. It teaches you certain things when you do become a coach. Like there's things you basically, it's not new to you because you've seen it your whole life. Right. So it's one of those. It's one of those things where you exactly right, Derek. You lived it. So when it's interesting. Now Butler's a great place, but and they understand that community aspect to everything. But it's interesting along the way, like when you interview with other people, like people don't realize that when you have a father as a coach, as a mentor, he's already kind of laid half your foundation down as far as a coach goes, right? Like you draw a lot of the principles from him, you draw a lot of maybe some of your motivational tactics from him. You draw some of the ideals of coaching, and then in football, obviously the technical aspects you might take some, and you might have learned from others things that you like to do, right? Obviously Butler traditionally throws a little more than Pompano Lakes did, so it's you take a lot of those things. It's always interesting to hear that. I'm curious, and I everybody has different answers on this. Do you have to deal with any of the modern issues that high school coaches have to deal with out, in a lot of maybe the bigger towns where players get poached, or recruited is a better word probably. I think
it's okay. We can call it that now.
Yeah. Now you can recruited to go different places. And has that had any effect? Like Saddlebrook's where I grew up, it's had a huge effect because, as you know, Bergen County and where Saddlebrook's located, if you are a really good athlete, like, I mean, your
options are endless pretty much.
Yeah. Like what did you say that the running back for St. Joe's is a Saddlebrook kid, right? I think Derek, is the kid who's always Division I. Like that evolved because we're Saddlebrook's located, and being a small school in the modern where you have Bergen Catholic and all those schools, and right near there, Paramus Catholic, it's starting to work against them a little bit. Do you guys have to deal with any of that kind of stuff?
Well, look, we're kind of we're Butler. The Butler Bloomingdale Youth Club is kind of a victim of their own success, right? They have a lot of success, so coaches from other schools are coming to watch their games, and I honestly think it's the kids are changing. I think that they like the idea of saying to their peers, "Hey, I'm thinking of going to another school, or I'm being looked at by another school." So it's not an easy situation, right? If a kid wants to, everybody always wants to tell me, "Oh, you have to recruit your own kids. You have to make them." I've been down that road, where we've had some kids who I know were being recruited by other schools, and they're thinking about going there. And I talk to their parents, they go anyway. So we know what we have here in Butler. We know what type of school we have. And if you want to come here and you want to be a part of our team, look, all you have to do is look at our facilities. I mean, if you just look at what our field house looks like, what our turf looks like, the snack stand, the parking lot, the weight room, we could literally compete with anybody's facilities in New Jersey. You know, I mean, they're stunning. The place where we play, the place where we lift, the place where we change before games it's gorgeous. So I think the program kind of speaks for itself. I still talk to the youth kids. You know, I talk to them about the type of school Butler is, the type of program we're trying to run. But you know, we have been much more so than I've ever seen in the past 26 years. Kids are starting to choose other high schools. I don't know if it's because they're being recruited by other high schools. I really don't know. I don't really care. You know, if a kid feels like he's going to be set up for success at a better school, then best to you. You know, I wish you nothing but the best. We're here. You know where you're from. You know where your friends are. If you want to come back, we're here. But I never those words really never come out of my mouth for Butler or Bloomington kids. You know?
I think you know it's also like we used to deal with it a little bit back in the day, right? Like a little bit. There was always a guy or two that would go to DePaul or do something of that nature. I don't think the pull was there like it is now, right? And obviously, I've been on the other side. And you just kind of look at it and you always want to get the right fit for the kid. And I think a lot of these kids are being told that they're a lot better than they are. And I think that they now go into a whole different pool of, well, I was really good with, Butler youth, but now you step into a different world when you're going to Bosco, Bergen, Joe's, like, everybody's that guy. It's a mini college setting. And now they get there and what happens most times they go there, they're not the guy, and now they just bounce back. And it's like, yeah, we told you so, but okay, all good. You're still accepting with it. It's still okay. It's just something that they kind of have to experience for themselves. But at the end of the day, I feel like, the tradition and all of that stuff for you has really, you don't deal with it as much as other areas do. Now, whether it's because of the geography of Butler, the tradition of Butler, the guys at the youth program telling you, your best bet is to go to Butler. But look, ultimately, like we talk about it all the time, if you're good, they'll find you. And if not, you can go to your showcases. You can do these other things that can get you, you know what I mean, eyes on you and whatnot. And then you can get to that next level, still going to Butler, playing next to your friends. That's just how I've felt the entire time. I feel like you deal with it less than other schools.
I think you're probably right, Derek. Look, we've had all kinds of Division I schools walking our hall through the spring, looking at guys. Our guys go to all the same camps all the other kids go to.
Yep.
I think one of the biggest myths out there is that more eyes are on you when you go to a parochial school versus when you go to a public school in the state of New Jersey. And through my experience, that is not true. And like you said, if you are good enough, you will be found. And
Yeah, I think the good thing is that with all the different events that they do have out there, you can go, you can be from a small school, go to these things, stand out, and it really doesn't matter what school you go to because and obviously most people know at least in New Jersey and probably PA in New York area, those schools know Butler, you know what I mean? So but it's I think that's a big part of it. Now there's so many college camps, mega camps, showcase camps, 7-on-7. You could go to a million things and be from a small school and stand out just the same. And actually, in some cases, it could work in your benefit,
work in your favor,
because you're lining up alongside this kid who is from this big school, and you go and do a great job, and it can work into your favor. I think that's definitely it's very interesting what's I think first of all, I think Butler, I think Derek's kind of right on this, in that you guys you may have taken a little more of a hit than in the past, but the other schools that you play against are taking way more of hits. So it kind of keeps you kind of on the same
100%. Yep.
playing.
I mean, look, you line up against St. Mary's Rutherford, you're like, oh boy, like I don't, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, like it's kind of one of, I mean, and then they win and they gotta go play DePaul or in the first round of the playoffs. Like, is that fair in any case of whatsoever? Just, I mean, talk about safety wise. No offense to those kids on St. Mary's, but buddy, you ain't lining up against, a dude going to Notre Dame and a dude going to Ohio State. Like, what are we doing? Like, but I get it. But it's
Yeah.
very, and also like the way, I mean, hopefully we can touch on it a little bit, but like, I think the way that your league sets up the playoffs, right?
It's
How you
great.
guys kind of do that little, like, whatever, right, Dave? Like the
They have a
final couple
Final
games of the
Four, I
year.
think.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
final four. I think we talk about it on this thing all the time. Like that, it's so cool, right? Because now you play your games. Now you're dialed up. All right, you're playing for something like a conference championship. Like you're already in that playoff mode weeks before anybody else is.
Well, the great thing about the NJIC format is that if you're maybe not having as successful of a season, it affords you an opportunity to play other teams who also maybe are not having as successful of a season, right? And then conversely, if you are having a good season, you're at the last 3 weeks,
Let's go.
you're going to see 3 good teams. So and if you happen to be in that championship format, if you're in the top 4 teams, you're playing one of the few meaningful games in the state week 7 and 8.
Right.
So it's just a handful of them.
Everybody else is just playing for PowerPoints now. Like, what are we
Yep.
doing? Like, oh,
And
if I win this, or should we do this, or whatever?
We're ramping up and we're getting ready. We're trying to be battle tested for the playoffs, and it's just an outstanding format. Kudos to Charlie Voorhees from Seacaucus for getting this thing going and keeping it rolling. I think he just has done a fantastic job. Charlie's the athletic director in charge of football for the NJIC. And kudos for the coaches to being committed to keeping this thing together. A lot of, towards the beginning of this season, they were having some issues with the number of teams in the 4 divisions and having the 5th. I think the super conference calls it the Ivy division or the Union division. Right. I'm not sure. The kids who compete in our conference, they went to those teams and said, "Hey, we're not having that. Everybody is coming back into the pool because by the end of the season, it all comes out in the wash."
I think for the NJIC, you don't need to. I think for the NJIC teams, you don't need to have that super conference Ivy League thing because you already have that there with what you're talking about. I think more conferences should adopt that style because
come on, Dave, we've been in this shit show down here. Like this is
I think it gives you a conference. It gives the high end a championship. So even if they don't win of state, it's not, they can win a conference championship or be one of the top 2 teams or whatever. And then, like you said, on the back end, the groups that are trying to win games that are struggling, having a tough year or maybe a tough couple of years, have an opportunity to win the last couple of games of the season. And at least even if they lose, they're competitive in those games. And I think you already have that format. It's probably one of the smartest formats in the whole entire country because in football, like even when you go around the country, everything is geared not to the league, but to getting to like state championship, right? So, Texas does a little bit of it on the high end with district and all that kind of stuff, the different district, regional, state, which kind of gives you an opportunity within your district. But it's very, very unique and it's unusual relative to almost everywhere else because there is no opportunity for the low end and the high end to have some level of success. I think that's smart for football, period, but especially smart for small schools because it is such a difficult thing for the small schools. Probably harder for, my guess, a lot of the Bergen County schools because the way that they structured the Bergen County school when they went to that, every town basically has a school system. Those towns had a lot of people and a lot of kids. What happened is people liked living in those towns, right? Same thing with Butler, right? They liked living in those towns. So when they got older, they didn't leave and they didn't replenish the kids. And that's what over time started to, and then you
Right.
started to have kids that were, if someone was went to college, out of state, well, that person most likely didn't come back to the town, right? So you lost the people from a sense, you didn't replenish them, and then you also lost a lot of people who went to maybe school out of state or out of the area, and you didn't replenish those people. So that's how you got a lot of small schools, and then over time that affected as football took that whole concussion era things. Football took a hit in that like 2012 to 2016 era, maybe a couple of years past that. But I think football's starting to have a comeback post COVID,
Yes.
because the farther you're getting away from that whole concussion thing, people are starting to realize that there's a lot more factors than just you playing football that was a cause of that. I mean, number one factor is that you play in the NFL, the most difficult thing. That most of the guys that had any issue were guys who played a long time in the NFL. Like, so you're talking about the 0.0001% of the whole entire community of football players. And that makes sense. If someone played till he was 35, I mean, when I was 35, I couldn't imagine playing in the NFL. You know what I mean? So guys are playing to 35 because they're so gifted physically, but they're still human beings like us, right? They're still
100%.
taking the hits, and so that does have an effect. So I think as the farther we get out of that, the better off it becomes. But I think that what they're doing with the small schools, what Voorhees is doing, and in the conference you guys are in is so spot on and is so good for those teams, and that's why they've been able to sustain for the most part, especially the better programs like yours, really been able to continue to sustain. You don't have to worry about playing Passaic Tech anymore or any of those kind of things. And it's really geared to have those small schools succeed.
They have it figured out. They have it done right, and it's right, and it's the best thing to do. It's the best thing to do for our school. It's the best thing to do, as a community of the NJIC schools. And I don't. The super conference is just so big.
It's huge.
It's just gigantic, and I don't. When we went into the super conference in 2016, I believe was the first year of it, and within 2 years, we were looking to get into the NJIC. It just made sense for us.
It's interesting being down here too, because when we're talking just football wise, like Shore Conference, it's the only conference in the state where, it's 1 year. You get a 1 year schedule, and then the next year we look at it again and we redo it. Like you don't even get a home and home. I mean, my previous stop, like we played at one school, we played at that school for 5 years in a row. Like there's not even a home and home. So
Right.
that's the only thing I'd say about the Shore Conference that they could tweak was maybe, every 2 years flip flop and whatnot with it. But, I think there's like 40 something teams in here. You got 5 divisions. They added New Egypt this year, which is really nice because now all of the true group ones, which are only maybe 5, 6, can get a full schedule and then go find your 3. They include the privates that are down here, which are, Donovan Catholic, SJV, and RBC. But other than that, that's it. Everything's a public school. But for the most part, we're talking regionalized monster schools. Like, most of these towns, you're talking, have 2 high schools. Like, we referenced Dave with Middletown South and, Mid-North. I mean, historic programs, right? And then you have, Brick Township, Brick Memorial, big historic programs. A school like Southern Regional or even Central, which is like Seaside Heights. Look at all the Toms Rivers. Like, these are all monster schools where, look, even when we were at RBR, with, first thing Dave and I said was like, dude, we got to get into the cafeteria. We got to get into the hallways because there's 10 football players walking around this building that we can go grab. You can't do that at Butler. Like, that's not what those programs are. I think the other thing too, getting into that conference helped out all of the other sports as well. I mean, look, I remember playing basketball in high school, and Dave, we're talking like I had 1 win freshman year, 3 wins sophomore year, maybe 11 or 10 when we had, the greatest basketball player's brother on our team in the history of the school, Jess Smith, who was a stud. But then senior year 6, like we're going to go to Newark West Side and play basketball against these guys, or we're going to go to, you know, Clifford Scott and play basketball against these big schools? Like, absolutely not. So I think it's helped out the other schools, the other sports as well at Butler.
Back at that time, Derek, when you were playing, it would be fine to play West Side or Clifford Scott.
Yeah, we were good.
Once, but not both of them. Not on top of playing DePaul and Passaic Valley and Wayne Valley and Orange. It just,
it took a toll towards the end, right? And it just kind of was what it was.
Really,
we never made excuses. But
the kids in Butler never make excuses. That's one of the best things about them. But it has been great. They've, for the most part, our sports have become more competitive,
right,
just about in every season by moving to the conference, because we're playing schools that are like us, like populations,
and for you, I know like you can speak on it because look, you were girls basketball coach, head basketball coach for how many years? Now, then you went into wrestling, you're doing a wrestling head coach. You always did track, right? And I always tell Dave this, I always reference this story. I said, Coach L tried to get me to go to track. He made me run 1/400 and I walked right off the track, went home and said, I'm not coming back, dude. I'll see you in the weight room.
Sorry,
and it was like, okay, no harm, no foul. You're good. It's okay. Just be able to catch the ball when it comes time. But I mean, look, how many years you did that forever? You were doing 3 sports all the time at a high level. I mean, you took over the girls basketball program. I mean, we were tournament of champions, like 2,000-point scorers, like on the regular. And then you took that thing over and just continued it running. Then all of a sudden it's like, hey, now I'm doing wrestling. Okay, cool. Go coach wrestling. Butler wrestling was never a thing when I was there. Now we're talking guys going AC. We're talking titles all over the place. Like, you've done it multiple sports, coach. And whether it's growing up in a household with a father as a coach, like you were just able to, didn't matter what season it was, like we knew Coach L was coaching something. Like, that's just what it was.
I appreciate that, Derek. And yeah, it's something I'm obviously really proud of the career I've built over the past 26 years with the girls basketball program, wrestling, track, football. And, I've been very, very fortunate in each of those sports. There has been exceptional, next level kids who could bring our team to those heights. I was there. I was the one facilitating, but it all comes off. Everything that has happened in my career has come off the sweat of some tough ass Butler Bloomingdale kid. So,
and I only reference that because like Dave, like his son plays every sport. And for the most part, like, I don't want him to hear this, but he's pretty damn good at most sports that he freaking plays, right? It's just going to be a matter of which one is he really going to like totally fall in love with, and which one are, I think Dave and I can kind of like, push him in a little bit of a direction. You know what I'm saying? But he's very good at a lot of sports. And Dave gets to now, he's in that world where he coaches them in football. And then, they got basketball or track or the kids go to play soccer. Or now he's traveling on a baseball team. Like, and now Dave's around that. Right. And I just referenced it because like for one guy to be able to keep a high level, on each sport, whatever he was doing, and whether it was boys, girls, like it was the same level of expectation, the same level of like, here's how we do it, here's what it is, and a high level of success. So, that's like, I see Dave's kid too, he's high level on a lot of things, and getting coaching from guys in different sports and whatever, and look, it's kind of funny when Dave first asked, Dave's like, hey man, he's playing basketball, do whatever, I'm coaching like some basketball. I'm like, oh buddy, good luck. Basketball's a different world. I said, dude, like, you're in a small gym. I said, but if you want to reference somebody who was always a yeller and figured out how to control it in a gym, it's Coach L, man. Because he was able, football field, like I heard him from the booth, up top, and then basketball, now it's like, oh, that's the same dude.
I got a big mouth, bro. I do. I got leather lungs. You could hear.
Oh, it's all good. I listen. I've been fortunate to coach with your father, play for you and coach with you, play with your, or coach, be coached by your brother and then coached with him as well. Like, believe me, I know the Luciani's got some lungs, dude.
Yeah, the yelling thing at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. I'm just trying to get my point across.
Right.
And if some feelings get grated, I always make sure I apologize after, because at the end of the day, we're all out here trying to win a game, get you better, and that's all that we're really doing. So
it's never malicious. It's just an intent. Like, hey, dude, sometimes I got to take it up a level. So
yeah, bro.
now maybe your interest, like, come here.
It doesn't mean yelling to me doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything to me. You can yell at me till you're red in the face. All right, that's just the way I was raised. That's the way that I am, and it's one of the things I always say. Hey, listen, you need to know this about me. I'm going to yell. I'm loud.
Yep.
Sometimes a little bit abrasive, but if I'm not talking to you or if I'm not yelling to you, then you know that there's that's when you know there's a problem. When I'm not saying anything to you. So
well, we need more Pompton Lakes, Saddlebrook, Butler, old school stuff around. I think the world would be, and the kids would be in a little bit better place than we have now. Some of these kids that are going off the rails. I think there's a toughness to it. Look, you're in a place where obviously they're always going to be advocates if it's for it. It's unique. I hate saying it's unique, but it's like,
isn't that scary to say that? Like, coaching hard is unique. Isn't that scared?
It's one of the there. I mean, I've coached in places where you could still do it, but like Old Japan, they're still able to do that stuff, and
Riverdale.
Riverdale, even though DJ is a legendary coach, he's not.
That's not him.
That's not. Yeah. And I don't know at Riverdale if.
Well, the dynamics of these towns
we
have changed.
were there in 2004. Everybody, I was yelling when I was coaching with him in 2006. I was yelling, but I mean, I was there. I was basically there because he was more of the. He would get upset, but his volume was lower. I was there to raise the volume, basically. So, but now I think it's a little different there at Riverdale, where you kind of have to. It's a different place in the sense there's multiple towns, and you got Bergen Catholic in the backyard. It's a different. Old Japan is isolated a little bit, way up, kind of a little bit like what Butler maybe in West Milford have,
Lakeland, West Milford, we talked about that.
Like
isolated pockets. Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Indian Hills, you couldn't.
I'm curious about, Coach, is like multi-sport athlete. You have a lot of multi-sport kids still at Butler?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone maybe?
Just about.
I think that's especially at a small school. The small schools that share their athletes win season to season to season. The small schools that are I only play this or I only play that, they suffer. They don't realize that they suffer because you could be taking the kid who plays multiple sports growing up, and that kid could be an athlete in 2 or 3 sports for you. So I think that's a huge thing because it helps football tremendously, in my opinion, because as the coaches all share athletes, it's hugely helpful of football because, when you get in a small school, if you're at a small school, I remember when I was at Powell Park, I had to convince them. It was one of the,
that was a good thing.
You can't, I told them, I mean, we were terrible in the beginning, and I said, we can't. None of you guys are going. You're all 4 and 22 because you all want to hoard the 5 kids you have. You know what I'm saying? Like, so instead of all of us being 4 and 22, why don't we share athletes and
let's
win some
get
games?
10 wins here, man. What are we talking about?
And as they started to do it, somehow only when the benefit was me, but. I thought everybody else would benefit. No, basketball
that's why you were gone real quick once you started
winning,
winning, buddy. That's
basketball
why you were
was
gone.
pretty good. But I definitely started to benefit. Basketball started to benefit. Track was always pretty good at those schools. But it has to be a philosophy. It has to be like
It has to be across the board. Everybody knew that, hey, man, if we're not playing in a state final, the next day after Thanksgiving Day game, we're going to basketball practice, dude. And then when basketball, my class, not so much, really, because we weren't really, like, baseball or track guys. That just was my class. But, like, everybody behind me was like, all right, dude, now it's spring, we're going to track. Or it's spring, now we're going to baseball. Like, you transition to another sport, and if you didn't play 3, you definitely played 2. And that's just what it is, because I feel like too, like at a small school like that, if guys don't play multiple sports, you may just not even have enough for a team. Like you may have to kill a whole sport, right? Which is why everybody's always like, why doesn't Butler have lacrosse? Why doesn't Butler have lacrosse? Well, Butler doesn't have lacrosse because if Butler had lacrosse, there'd be no baseball or there'd be no track. The numbers just don't line up. You can't do it.
Right. So, you know, a lot of other sports don't want to admit that football drives the culture of your school.
How many times have we said it?
It does not matter what school you're in. Football drives the culture of your school. Okay. So, you know, Butler they understand this for whatever reason. They understand, right? When the football team is doing well, the culture of the school does well. When the football team does not do well, you know, it's always like, something about this year is just not right. Yeah, I know what it is. The football team stinks, right? Now, those years are few and far between for us, fortunately, right? So, you know, football is one of the few sports anymore where you don't have to play football all year to be a good football player, right? If you want to be like, get a basketball scholarship or wrestling or baseball, you know, you got to play. You just got to, and you got to do those things. We, fortunately, in our sport, a kid could show up in August 1 and be the best player in your team. In other sports, it could happen, but it's really few and far between. So our philosophy, my philosophy that we've developed since I've been at Butler for 25 years is if you're going to be on our football team, you are either going to participate in another sport or you're going to participate in weight room. Otherwise, you can't be on the team. If you cannot commit to those that's our like number one commandment. If you're going to be on this team, you got to be involved in something else. And I know other schools do this, and every one of them that does it, they're all successful. So sometimes, you know, we have a bunch of kids now who, you know, play football, basketball. You know, when there's a 5 o'clock basketball practice, they're lifting at 3 o'clock, and then they go to basketball practice. That's what it takes.
I remember getting a lift in before a game.
You cannot have a good football team in this day and age unless your kids lift. That is like a prerequisite anymore. It used to be if you lifted, you were going to be good. Now you have to lift just to be able to.
That's like the base, like maybe.
So if you're not gonna, and you know, kids who want to play football, who really want to be there, they commit to that. That's it. I can name maybe 3 kids in the past 20 years who would have been good players for us, but could not make that commitment. They wanted to work. They wanted to do something else. That's fine. No,
that's okay.
I appreciate you. You would have been a great player for us. No hard feelings. You go live your life. But it just does not jive with what we're trying to.
Well, one of my philosophies on work has always been because there are kids sometimes that have those situations. I always say if you can work
like, coach, I got to work, right? I got to go to work.
If you can work it out, if you can work out your situation, it will benefit you to work it out because you will be working the rest of your life. So, but you only have one chance to play sports. Like, and then once that's gone, it is gone. Like it's a thing that, you know, kids don't while they're in it sometimes understand it. And they might have sometimes people are in situations, I get it, you know, where they need to make some money. And there are ways I've seen kids do it. Like I've seen kids work before they went to school, at night, you know, play.
Listen,
there are ways
at Butler. We always figured out a way at Butler, Dave. Whether it was only working on Sundays or whether, and this is just the type of town it was. And I can remember this, and this is a crazy story. Like Scott Brown was Gatorade player, best quarterback in the freaking state, breaking records, leading teams all over. Like this dude worked at the sandwich shop downtown on Sundays in the mornings. Like, hey man, what can I get you? Oh, you need an Italian hero? Okay, like that was what like he had to work, and he's the
Yep.
best quarterback like all over the place, right? And that was always like the viewpoint of how it was. And these look, the people in the community too are willing to, like, somebody needs a job or something like that. Hey, I got a job. He can work this time to this time. He can leave early, go to practice, or hey, I know he's got a commitment here and do like that stuff doesn't happen anymore. You know what I mean? Like that's what's another thing that separates Butler from it. It's just different like that.
And one of the things that has helped us, I mean, electronic communication has really been huge in the past, 10, 15, 20 years, where, we make an agreement with all our kids. If you're going to miss, you have to put it in writing, and your parents can't do it for you.
Nope.
If your mom emails me that you're missing practice, it's getting deleted. You have to do it. You have to tell me why you're missing, and then it's excused. Coach, I have to work. My boss will not let me off. I have to leave weight room at 3:15. I cannot make practice. I'm going on vacation. No problem. Thank you for letting me know. But if it becomes a thing where, hey, where's Derek today? I don't know. Did anybody hear from him? He didn't email me. Okay. And then hey, Derek, you didn't communicate. Where were you? Okay, listen, the standard is you communicate.
That's it.
If it becomes a habit, we're going to have a separate conversation with your parents. And that, when I tell you that never happens, that never happens.
I really like that. That's awesome. That's an awesome
the way we do it.
Yeah, that's all. I don't think I've ever.
The onus is on you if you care about it.
I never did that as head coach. That's really.
Well, Dave, it's definitely something that's changed.
It has to come from the player. I like that a lot.
It's definitely something that's changed a little bit more because with the easy access communication now, like I'm telling you, dude, they can just drop it through whatever app that you're using that protects you from like, shooting off personal to your personal cell or whatever. Like there are ways that we do it.
Well, I like that it has to be the kid. I like the coach has to be the kid that does it.
Yeah,
not mommy. Like mommy and daddy ain't doing it anymore, buddy. Like if you care about it that much, you'll tell me and you'll relate it.
We have a preseason meeting. I don't want parents to think that I don't want to hear from them, right? Because that's
right.
We have a preseason meeting. All the parents and kids have to attend. And one of the things I say to the parents is, your job is to advocate for your child. If you think something is wrong for your child, if you think that there's an issue between me and your child, that is certainly within your rights to do so as a parent. Okay, but I am trying to help your son learn a skill. The skill is communication. You have to communicate with your employer. You have to communicate with your parent. You have to communicate with your wife. You have to communicate with your children. So all I'm asking you to do is, if your child has to miss something, that I want to hear it from them. I don't want to hear it from you. So if you are reaching out to me, it should be something about an injury. That's, my son is hurt. My son, I have a problem with my son's playing time. Any of that, that's fine. But when it comes to not being present, where it's their actual responsibility, I need to hear from them. And then, again, the parents, they want that kind of stuff. They embrace it. At least in our school, they say, okay. And I mean,
you're helping them.
You're helping them.
Coach, I'm gonna be 10 minutes late. My shift got pushed back. I'm on vacation early this week, Coach. Just a reminder. And thank you for letting me know. That's it. And as long as we communicate, I don't have, again, it goes back to the step thing. I don't have the opportunity. It's not 20 years ago where I could say, oh, you're missing, you're gone.
Right.
Bro, I want Butler kids on my team. I want to have a community. I want it to be something that they want to be a part of. And I feel this has been really, really good for us. And the kids have been great. The parents have embraced it. The kids have embraced it. So that's one of our little tricks that we use.
That's great. That's a great tidbit there. That really is. Now the tougher question is when a parent wants to take their kid away on vacation in the middle of your camp.
My best guy's leaving Wednesday. We have a 7-on-7.
You don't have to answer that, Coach. Do not answer that one. What you have to do there.
You know what I said to him? I said, not a problem. Have a great vacation. I'll see you the first day of camp. That's it. I have a mom. My mom used to make me do stuff I didn't want to do all the time. It is what it is. We all have stuff we got to deal with.
Yep.
Every one of us has stuff we got to deal with, and that's what. Hey, if a kid will come to me and say my mom is me, I will say I have a mom too. I understand. Go do what you got to do, and I'm trying to build a relationship with the kids.
No, it's fantastic. It is. It's fantastic. I mean, today's era, you have both the tough part and then the part that you have to be flexible on, and in order to build the program. I think you've got
It's almost like you have to pick your battles.
Yeah, pick your battles. Phenomenal handle. You can't fight every battle. I think that's the mistake that a lot of
coaches
make is they try to fight every battle, and you can't fight.
And they always have to try and win, right? Like they always got to win it. Like I need to establish myself as I am the head coach. This is what happens, Dave. What do we always talk about?
This is my 50 rules. Oh no,
less rules, more parameters, right? Like because now I just feel like look, and we have always said this,
man.
Less rules. More, right? Because everything nowadays is basically a case-by-case basis. It is what it is. If you want to now lay out these if you miss this, you're sitting a quarter. If you're doing this, you're missing a half. Now you're screwing yourself because now, like, you got to stick to it. And if you don't, now it's like, well, your rules don't mean shit. And now everything comes, it's more parameters and case-by-case basis. Like, it's not those old school, like, this is how we do it. This is what it is. You got to be flexible, man. I think that's the biggest, misconception is like, oh, I have to be this way and firm and all that.
Why you would want to argue with your own kids who are supposed to lay it out on the line for you and the team,
right?
And
that kid's gonna do now what you asked him to do.
Always escapes me, man. Back to the rules thing. I don't have written rules. We have standards. The standard is you communicate.
There you go.
Communicate. That's it. The standard is you lift if you're not doing a sport. That's the standard. That's it. If you don't want to live up to the standard, we help to try to bring you up to. We try to raise you up to that standard. And for the most part, they do. That's all I'm trying to accomplish.
That's exactly it. It's the standard is what is the most important thing, and then because the thing you don't want to do is pigeonhole yourself as a coach because it's always funny in the old days. He says, there's rules for all these people, and then all of a sudden the best player has something happen to him, and then now your rules go out the window. Your rules go out the window. That's why you don't need to have rules. You just have standards, and then you can apply what you need to on a case-by-case basis. Coach, it's been great having you on. Fantastic.
Coach, thank you for having me on. Great to see both of you.
You're gonna have you email me that clip so I could go back and think about when I actually could run.
As soon as we jump off, Coach, I'm gonna drop you an email.
You got it, Coach. Have a great day,
man. Thank you so much,
awesome, buddy. Guys. Thank you.
It's been phenomenal.
Good luck, man. We'll talk soon. He's the best, dude.
Oh, that was great. That was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
He's awesome, dude. He's awesome.
Listen,
I'm telling you, dude. He coached my sister in basketball. Like, then he went to he was always the track coach, and then he did wrestling, and that's no bullshit. He coached gymnastics, and I'm telling you, like his first year gymnastics, like our gymnastics coach, Miss Ferentz, she was legit, dude. Like they won a lot of gymnastics things before he left, and he did that. He's always been awesome, man. Even as a phys ed teacher, he's usually always one of the most liked teachers in the building, no matter what, right? Like not because he's easy or whatever, but just because like he said, there's always a standard to whatever he does. And I think some of the stuff that he does, he can only do at Butler. But you know what? At the end of the day, like it's what he has to do to be highly successful. And, merging those youth programs, he was highly involved in that. And dude, that was like 20 years of trying to get that done. And he finally helped get it done and facilitate it, which is, for him, a great move. Now those kids play together for 20 years. Like it's incredible. It's wild.
Fantastic, man. Fantastic. All right, we'll get back on. We'll be back on tomorrow, I think at 11. And
Coach Wrestler, man, little Hackensack action.
Hackensack High School, legendary program. We'll talk some football there, and then we'll see you tomorrow.